Hi and welcome people to my program, and we've got another incredible program lined up for you today, and it's all to do with commercial insurance. In the studio today we have Asif Khan from Inspire Risk Management Limited and also Faith Shaw. The reason why we have this program today is because business insurance is a very big topic for every single business, and the reason for that is that the UK insurance industry is actually the third largest in the world and the largest in Europe. Every single person in the UK, whether they are involved in a business or not, are definitely involved with a insurance policy of some type or another. But if you're a business, some of those requirements are actually legal. So to figure out which legal requirements you need to meet, and then we have premiums, and to figure out how to protect yourself. And that's the main essence of an insurance policy, is to protect yourself, to protect your employees, to protect yourself against any future accidents, liabilities, etc., etc. And the list goes on. And it's actually turned into a bit of a maze. So I thought, how about we bring a really good professional and we speak to them about this whole area of insurances. So let's welcome Asif on the program. Welcome, Asif.
Thanks, Buddy. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you for coming. And first off, I mean, we know you're Asif Khan and you are from Inspire Risk Management Limited, and you call yourself a client director. What is one of those? What does a client director do?
What my role essentially is to go to, whether it's a business, organisation, charity, Masjid Islamic school, make sure their assets are protected, assets being property side, and the risk management is in place for the liabilities. Again, that will cover areas like the health and safety, fire safety, make sure they've got that in place. In a nutshell, that's it. Depending on the organisation, you go into a lot deeper, but that's the core of it.
Let's talk about your award. You were a finalist at the Manchester Insurance Awards. How did that come about?
At that time, as an underwriter, which we could probably go into a bit of detail later, but whichever broker you saw, they sent your business through to me and I said what price you would be paying. We came up with a few different initiatives that helped the business as a whole, and this was obviously a large insurance company, so as a result I was fortunate to be put up for the award.
That's absolutely fantastic. That means people were definitely in the right, capable hands. And it's really, really important, because I've got lots of questions for Asif. It's really important to be in the right hands with your insurance policy and those. But first off, I've had a lot of questions on Facebook, and we do have a lot of large international viewership for this program. And one thing is, Asif, that a lot of people, especially our international viewers, simply can't understand why the UK is so heavily regulated by the government. It's actually a legal requirement, because in some countries it's not a legal requirement to have any kind of business insurance. So why is it this way?
The government do it and insurance companies do it to help and protect the right of the individual. In Britain especially, people have the right to speak up for themselves and also to defend themselves in court. So that's whether you're an employee, whether you're driving on the road, there's a reason these are legal requirements, and so that's why the government pushes on it so harshly.
So in countries where there isn't such legal requirements, does that mean that we are then in the lead and we're better protected as citizens?
I would say so, but we've done it historically ever since the days of the Great Fire of London. We've looked to protect individual and people's homes. But I would say the English insurance world is a lot further ahead than anyone else.
One of the problems that we have in a recession, people, is that because it's a legal requirement, and most people, what they tend to do is they go for the cheapest insurance at the minimal type of policy that they can basically get away with, because again it's a legal requirement, it's something that they have to do and not something they would like to do. So what are your views about this? What would you like to say to our viewers who hold this kind of view?
Normally when people think of cheap insurance, they think car insurance. And that's because of the way the insurance company has marketed it with the likes of Money Supermarket, Compare the Market, and we call them aggregators. Basically, once you have a big website, lots of different insurers, and that works for that, for private car insurance, because it's a simple tick box. If you fit the right box, you get the right price. For commercial insurance, when you run your own business, whether you're self-employed or whether you're a charity, it isn't the same thing. And there's legal obligations that you need to make. You need to have health and safety in place, you need to have fire safety in place. For example, masjids with madrasas, you need to be doing fire drills to make sure the children know where to go in the point of an evacuation. You're not going to find these on websites, so that's why you need a good broker to go through these details with you and then make sure the insurance policy is correct, and if and when a claim happens, you'll be looked after properly.
So why is it then that there's such a massive difference in credits? Because obviously, you know, businesses, they want the best offer for their money. It is a recession. They want, you know, good value as well. But sometimes the difference between one company and the next in terms of insurance, and we'll talk about this insurance companies versus brokers, underwriters as well, people, in a minute. But for the time being, we'll just refer to everybody in the insurance industry as one big branded undername of insurance. So why is there such a massive difference in quotes? I mean, it can literally range from a couple of hundred to a couple of thousand. There's such a massive difference. It's not like a couple of pennies either. What happens?
You have to think of it. I always give the car scenario. So if you go and buy a BMW, you're going to pay a certain price. And if you buy an old banger, you're paying a certain price. But with that, in your own mind, you make the decision of the quality that you're going to get back from it. With insurance, it's similar with that view, but there are differences as well. If you buy a cheaper policy with an insurer that you wouldn't be as familiar with, there will be restrictions on that policy. And unfortunately, normally that comes out when a claim happens, and they'll add those endorsements then. That's when you'll see them. With the likes of Aviva, the Zurich, the big 5 insurers, you'll notice there's less restrictions on policies, but most good brokers will always recommend you go with a well-recognised insurer for that reason, that if a claim happens, they're the best people to look after you.
So people, before we go any further, what we'd like to know is that because it's a legal requirement to have these insurances, I mean, what if a business decided to break the law, not have any particular kind of insurance? What would happen? Who would find out? Would anybody be any the wiser?
If anyone were to find out, you would be fined, and it can warrant a custodial sentence as well, depending on who it is and what they're doing. It tends to be strict on employers and people in the financial services, but if you don't have the legal requirement and the minimum legal requirement of insurance, yeah, you can find yourself in hot water quite quickly. So
where do people go to find out whether they have a legal obligation or not to meet?
There are websites like the Princess Trust have a business side and Business Link, and I always recommend BIBA. BIBA is the British Insurance Brokers Association. All good commercial brokers will be registered to BIBA, so straight away you know you're in relatively safe hands. And I would recommend going on there, speaking to a broker. You don't have to pay anything to get that initial advice. There's no cost. The broker will give you the advice, and it's up to you whether you act upon that afterwards.
We've had a lot of terms mentioned already, and we're not even 10 minutes into this programme. So please, Asif, what's a broker? What's an underwriter? What's an insurance company? Because I'm left confused.
Yeah, sorry, I taught insurance first, English second. An insurance company are, when you think of Zurich, AXA, Aviva, the big insurance companies, and if you have a claim, those are the ones that are going to be paying out your claim. An underwriter works for that insurance company. He will assess, based on the presentation that's given from your broker, the person you speak to, what price you should be paying for that year. So it's the relationship between you, the broker, and then the underwriter to how much you should be paying. So that's why it's essential you pick a good broker, because that will dictate what you pay and what happens in the event of a claim.
So how do people find a good broker? Because I'm sure everybody claims to be a good broker. Yeah,
everyone does. But there's certain criteria that I would say that recognises you as a good broker. BIBA, if you just put into Google BIBA, British Insurance Brokers Association, is the association of brokers in the United Kingdom and is the most recognised and well known probably in the world now. I think there's over 2,000 commercial brokers in the UK, and there's a lot more brokers, but I wouldn't even personally insure my house with someone that wasn't a BIBA broker.
Okay. Why is that?
The BIBA broker, to become and get that status, you have to have shown a certain competence in what you do. As part of that, there's a commitment to professional qualifications, ongoing training and development. In the same instance, if you saw a solicitor and accountant, you expect them to reach a certain education level and what have you, and it's the same thing with BIBA brokers. And it's an easy process. When you're on the website, you just put your postcode in and the brokers appear. There's nothing harder than that.
People, the difference between a good broker and somebody who's not quite so professional is simply this. Because once you're stuck in a situation and you make a claim, whether that's an employee making a claim against you, whether somebody's had an accident or injury at your place of work and they're making a claim against you, it's usually a case of that there's been a situation and you need to make a claim. Now, if you have a good broker, when you have that list of exclusions, which can go across lots and lots of pages or maybe one page, it's the small print. So if there's a small print which says that your car park should have been checked twice a day, once a year, that's the difference. Because if you didn't know that clause, once you make a claim and somebody's actually tripped in your car park or so, your claim would be made void. So what that means is the insurance company would not pay out. So in that case, if the insurance company doesn't pay, who then pays for that claim? What happens?
It's a difficult process. It depends on the circumstances of what's happened. But if you feel it's a legitimate claim, you need to make a complaint to your broker first. Because of the FSA, the Financial Services Authority, the broker has a certain amount of days where they get back to you, or they should get back to you. And if you're not happy with their view, you then can complain to the Financial Ombudsman, who will basically act independently and decide what happens, and they will then refer to the insurer and say, yes, this person was entitled to a claim or not. Dependent on the type of business, I always say when you speak to your broker, get evidence in writing. If you're not sure of a particular area, ask them in writing what it is that you want and get them to confirm it, because you can be sure when a claim happens, it'll be that area, and the broker would have forgotten what would have happened. They would have forgotten the conversation. It's very hard to disprove that then later on if you've not got it written down.
So people, make sure that your broker is a very good broker, because the small print is actually very, very fine and thin. And the last thing you want to know is what's what when you actually come to make a claim. So whose responsibility is it to read that small print and actually understand, you know, there's list of exclusions, and they're actually written in different languages. It's not in straightforward English though, is it?
No, it is in insurance language, and it's been built over a century now. It's the broker's responsibility, it's not the individual. If you're a business, which obviously most of the viewers are, or you're self-employed, that's why you need to pick your broker carefully. There's what I call a tendering process. When people phone you up and say, oh, I'd like to quote for your business, you can just refuse, and I would refuse. What I would do is invite 3 brokers in, have a conversation with them, just get a feel of how they know and understand your business, whatever the business be, whether it's a beautician or wholesalers and manufacturers. Get to know the broker individually first. From that, that's when you would decide who you would want to deal with. And for me, that's how I would go about picking the right broker.
But you know, seeing that there's money involved in this, and because it's backed by government, I mean, a lot of people would argue, because doing the course of research for this program, a lot of people have said, well, because the law's behind it, we have to comply, therefore insurance companies, you know, they charge sky-high premiums. Is that true? Is there any truth in this?
No, the insurance companies charge based on a number of areas. One is the claims that they've suffered, one is their reinsurance costs, which, without boring, is how much they've invested to cover themselves in the event of claims, and it's also what they've got on their book already of business. And there's a few other areas, obviously their own operating costs, what have you, but the government very rarely have any influence to do with whatsoever. The normally only time where they would get involved when huge substantial losses happen, like the floods in Cumbria, and say you need to action this quickly. Very rarely do the government have any authority, because most insurance companies are worldwide. They have an operating licence for the UK and they operate here, but they're so big, they're on their own basically. They do things themselves.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I mean, I've got so many questions for Asif today. One of my other questions that leads on from this is that, because obviously, you know, we're an Asian program, we're you know, it's DM Digital, we televise, you know, to our Asian audience, you know, dominantly. A lot of people also do hold this view, because I'm going to ask all, you know, all the views that everybody does hold today. Sorry about this. But one of the questions is that if it's an Asian-looking company, if the majority of the staff in a particular establishment, insurance industry establishment, look Asian, there's this view that they'll be a lot cheaper than some, you know, the office next door insurance if they were non-Asian. Is there any truth in this?
I can only talk for commercial insurance. I would say no, there is no truth in it. Again, you want to make sure whether they're Asian, Muslim, Sikh, whichever background, that they're, again, a BIBA certified insurer, and they've got the qualifications to back it, and they're, you know, well regulated. What you find is if the broker's good, you will always be thereabouts, the most competitive price. Somebody will always get there a little bit less, but you need to build that relationship with your broker, that he knows your business so well that if a claim happens, you'll be fully supported. You have to weigh that up with pricing. I've had people that have had substantial claims, and because I knew the business inside out, when it came to the insurer, we negotiated even on the claim settlement and how quick it would be done, how quick payments, sub-payments would be made. Now, if I didn't know the business that well and how it ran, we couldn't have negotiated that. So if you're just doing the deal over the phone with an insurance company and with a broker, you will never get that sort of service. So it's important that you pick the right broker. Now, whether they're Asian or not, they're good Asian brokers individually, but again, I would say go on Bieber, and they will be the highly and most accredited brokers for you. And you will have Asian staff, and there's no reason you can't ask and say, you know, is there somebody, especially if there's language issues or what have you, there's no reason not to ask for it. I mean, I deal with obviously a lot of masjids as well during the Faith Show scheme, and sometimes there is language issues there. But once they've got an understanding, they're happy to speak to anyone in the office because they know they understand what goes on in the mosque. So as long as you've got a good qualified brokerage to speak to, you should feel comfortable with that, regardless of their background.
You know, just for the benefit of all our viewers, say they were walking down the road and they saw a couple of insurance companies, how would they actually know that they're even Bieber registered? What would they have to do?
You could ask them, or you can go on the Bieber website. If you just put BIBA insurance into Google, it will come up and you can put your postcode in. But you can just ask them and say, are you?
So could you not actually put the insurance company's name in and then figure it out that way?
It depends whether or not they've put it on their website. Most do.
Okay.
But again, it depends how up-to-date their website is and how easy it is to navigate and see.
One of the things is that those in the Asian community, again, we're coming back to price, because price is actually a big thing. Because if people can't afford to pay for their premiums because of their new startups and stuff, what should a business be doing to make sure that they keep their premiums to an all-time low? Any golden hints or tips?
Yeah, any business. The good broker, again, will advise on this, making sure you've got good fire safety, risk management, you've done your health and safety, you've basically tried to minimise any loss. As if an insurer sees that, they will discount the policy for you. You don't even need anything else. You could stay with the same insurer and save money. If you said, we've put fire extinguishers in, you know, we've done a full health and safety review, we've spotted this and we've reduced this, if you pass that to the insurer, that sort of information, that will reduce your premium. On some businesses up to 20%.
I hope everybody, you've got pen and paper and you're actually taking notes of this, because we are actually giving you some really golden tips. One of those is the main reasons to comply is because you will save money overall. So if you have a fire safety policy, if you have other health and safety initiatives, one of them we were talking during the break was the PAT test. Would you like to explain to our viewers what a PAT test is?
Yeah, PAT test and electrical inspection are, if you are a commercial business again, or a masjid, a school, whatever you are, there's legal requirements that you need to make. And with insurance, one of the biggest claims is fire claims because of electric faults. Every insurance commercial policy will make sure and insist upon that you do your PAT test and electrical inspection. If you call any good fire safety company, they will come and do that for you. The PAT test just checks portable appliances, so it's just portable appliances.
It's like your toaster and your kettle, people. Yeah. You know, your toaster, your kettle, your computer plug, your sockets.
Exactly.
They will just check those and make sure, the fuse hasn't dropped out of them or something. But if you don't have that, it can sometimes actually void your policy, because in my office, I have my own office aside from the studio, and we do PAT tests, and every single plug is actually checked. So any small appliance like your toaster, your kettle, all those little things that we have in the offices, they need to undertake that electrical inspection test, and it's actually written at the back as well. They put this little stamp on it, puts the date on, so you actually do know about it.
I mean, depending on the commercial policy, as a minimum, you have to do it every 5 years. Some insurance companies want it every 3 years, and if you don't do that, any fire claim or property claim will be void.
There's so much small print with these policies, and sometimes it's a real big challenge. So how do people actually approach their broker? I mean, is he just on call 24 hours to read the small print for you?
It depends on what it is. I mean, for masjids, I tend to work after 5 o'clock, but for businesses before 5 o'clock PM. This is the whole point of when you go through picking a broker, you feel that they know enough of what they're doing to be able to explain what you need to do for your insurance. As a business, you need to just concentrate on running your business, otherwise there's not much point being there. And what you end up doing is falling into a bubble when you run your business. You want to get business in, make a profit and go home and sleep peacefully and enjoy your family. You don't want to be thinking about insurance. So the point of picking the right broker is they take that worry for you. And that could be whether you're a wholesaler and you're thinking in the future, we might plan selling to America. Will that make a difference? Straight away, you should just be able to text your broker, send him an email, say, this might be happening, let me know what might happen. And then your broker should be able to get back to you. You should have that sort of relationship, like a friendship relationship. And that's what a good broker will do for you. And they'll give you that sort of advice daily if need be, depending on where the business is and how it's growing. Okay,
for the benefit of all our viewers that are thinking about starting up in business, because we are a business program, so if we can't discuss it here, they're going to be a little bit stuck as well.
Yeah.
What kind of essential policies or insurances do they need to take? You know, for some of our typical Asian businesses, so we've got our grocery stores, we've got halal meat shops, we've got a growing, beauticians industry that's building up, as we speak. So what are the typical insurances that they need?
Well, the shops all need public liability because customers are coming into your premise. And any business that has people coming in, you have to have public liability.
Does that still go for home workers, for all those people that work from home?
If you work from home, you can actually get a working from home policy that would cover it. It depends if people are coming into your home or not. Mm-hmm. And even if someone's just popping in to visit, but it's for business, then you should have public liability.
Okay.
With the beauticians, that's a slight area of concern, especially within the Asian community, because if you were to ask most, have they got public liability insurance, they would probably say no. We're probably not far off. We've had investigations go through, and we're probably not far off legal claims being going against some of the beauticians and people either paying big fines or ended up in mandatory prison sentences. So yeah, and the public liability for a beautician is £100–200 for a year. For a year. And if you want to do like the hair treatment, there's an extension again, even for that you need, and that's a small amount. And so it's a very small policy, but if you don't have it, the consequences of not having it could be, could ruin your life.
Just a little message for all you beauticians out there watching this program. It's essential that you have public liability insurance, because there's been a few cases that have obviously come to our attention where a prospective bride just before her wedding, she's had some waxing treatment, and beautician just made a few scars on her face and stuff. So, and that kind of case can end up in court. So if all you beauticians out there, please do take out public liability insurance. Are there any words of advice you would like to give this particular industry, because we're getting to hear quite a lot of things about them?
For the beauticians, again, you need to pick the reason you pick the good broker, and they will give you the right advice, because not every beautician is the same. If you have a shop premises, obviously it will be different to somebody working at home, and if you're starting new, it's quite difficult to get insurance properly, and they'll want to know your experience and what have you. So just go to Beaver, pick a good broker from there, and you get again someone you feel comfortable with, and they'll go through everything with you. They'll sit down, they'll either invite you into their office, they may even come to your house and see you, and they'll go through it with you.
But suppose some of our viewers have a really bad experience with a particular broker. What can they do? Who regulates the industry?
The Financial Services Authority regulate the industry, but you can make a complaint. You should make a written complaint, I would, to the broker, and they have to respond within a certain time frame. If you're dissatisfied with that, again, you can go to the Financial Ombudsman and complain through there, and they will usually settle it for you because they have to come to a decision.
So, for all our viewers to take out full cover, I mean, some people just simply can't afford some of the high premiums, and they are pretty high. But those that want to take out a full cover, again, it's quite expensive. So what can they do?
It's difficult because with insurance, the costs should always come secondary to making sure you're covered right first. The worst that could happen was when a business that I knew quite well was a large wholesaler employing 30 people. He cheaped out on his insurance, if you like, and everybody lost their job at the end of a fire claim because he couldn't, carry the business on. So the main thing is get the policy right. If you get the policy right, you implement the correct risk management procedures, you won't be paying as much as you might think. And that's my advice. But make sure, obviously, it's a good broker and a reputable insurer. That's according to AM Best, who give the financial ratings an A or AA rated insurer.
People, in the insurance industry, you get to hear the good and the bad and the evil. And there's definitely two sides to this story. And one of them is planned fraudulent applications against the insurance industry. Some people think it's a get-rich-quick scheme. How does the insurance industry cope with that?
There are measures that they have in place already and tactics that they're employing. And one is obviously personal injury and motor. I don't tend to deal with any sort of personal car, but even a motor trade, commercial fleet, it happens. And unfortunately within the Asian community, a lot of the pop-up businesses now are accident management companies. The referral fees for a start have been banned, or going to be banned. So as AXA only last month are not referring any claims on to solicitors. And this was what was causing the hike in premiums for a start.
People, we're going to stop it right there, right as we get into the flow of things, because we will definitely touch on this key point when we come back, because it's quite critical as well. So please join me after the break. Hi people, and welcome back to part 2 of Strictly Business today. And just to have a quick recap, we've got Asif Khan from Inspire Risk Management Limited and Faith Shaw in the studio today. And what we're talking about is business insurance. And it is a maze, so we're trying to go through the myths, go through some of the perceptions that we as people hold about the insurance industry. And likewise, we'll be asking them what they think of the Asian business community sector as well. And the reason why this is quite a hot topic is because the UK insurance industry is actually the 3rd largest in the world. And Asif Khan is also a member of Faith Shaw, which is all about insuring mosques. So we'll, during the course of the program, we'll also be discussing that. But coming back to the point where we left off just before the break, we were talking about motor insurances. So would you just like to go back into that, because that seemed quite interesting?
Yeah, there's a difficulty with motor insurance, because everybody wants cheap insurance, whichever way you do it, through whether you get a family fleet policy, whether it's a business fleet for an Asian business that still have their family on it, or it's a motor trade policy, which motor trade has always been the problem for the Asian community with insurers.
Why is that?
Mainly the fraud element. With the business fleets, it's fine. You'll always get a couple of youngsters, but it's always next to the family business, so it's always been a safe option. Family fleets, basically it's the family has one big car, they can insure the kids' cars, the youngsters' cars in that policy, and again that's safe because it's all one policy, so the dad knows if they're recklessly driving it's going to cost him more. Motor trade is not the same thing. There used to be a time where willingly anybody could get a road risk policy, which the young male audience will know what that is. That covers you to drive any vehicle on a commercial policy. So for them it's great because straight away you can buy an Audi A6, Range Rover, you can drive it, you're insured even if you're 18 for business. But obviously there was an opportunity to take advantage of that. And the Asian community unfortunately seized upon this in very significant amounts, whether it be Manchester, Birmingham, London, it was all obviously the big city areas. And the common fraud area was where they would buy the policy, all of a sudden 10 friends are on the policy and they're driving around whatever cars they want and charging them the insurance, and obviously this was insurance fraud. As a result of that, as a result of the accident management companies relating to that, if you're a new young Asian entrepreneur and you're thinking, you know what, I'm quite good at selling, I might buy and sell cars, you will struggle to get insurance now. And some people said, is this racism within insurance? When it comes to claims, insurance is quite good at not being racist because what they do is just base it on the claims, what has made a loss. Now, if they see all the Asian names in all the Asian areas making these claims, the first thing they're going to do is shut that door. So what's happened as a result? Now, if you're a motor trader, whether it's BB1 to BB14, OL1 to OL11, you'll be familiar with the postcodes B1 to B16. You won't get a new motor trade policy, or you will struggle. Or you pay a hell of a lot for it compared to somebody without that Asian name. And obviously there's exceptions to the rule. If you have a lot of experience in the business and you're showing and proving you're legitimate in what you're doing, but unfortunately there's a lot that still aren't, still trying to get these policies and think, this is the cheap way of doing insurance, and at the same time we can profit from this and potentially do it as a fraudulent business. So it's the Asian community shooting itself in the foot. So
what kind of image does the Asian community hold within the insurance sector?
With motor, quite a negative one. Even as an obviously Asian insurer myself, inshallah, when we become Sharia compliant for the Faith Shaw, for the masjids, we're going to expand in the future to accountants, IT. We will never, not while I'm in charge anyway, touch Asian motor. And as an Asian, it's a sad state of affairs, but because of the amount of fraud, and it's obviously a certain generation that do it, we will never attempt, and there's been companies that try it, a big American company tried it with Salam Insurance to do halal private car insurance, and it failed because no insurance company makes a profit from private car insurance. Where they make the profit is from the investments from private car insurance, and obviously trying to be halal and Sharia compliant, you have to monitor quite intensively those investments, so it's not feasible for private car. And with the Asian community, with the way they act for personal injury claims with the motor section, the motor sector, it just wouldn't be feasible, so I would never get involved in that.
Okay, the other question is we've touched upon young Asian, males, car insurance, and we all know, for those of us who have, young adult children, is that it's actually phenomenal. I mean, we're talking about at least £2,500–3,000 to insure a young person, depending on where you lived, it can be a lot more than that, but as a basic minimum, you're looking at 2,500 to 3,000 to insure on a private vehicle, aside from, you know, the business angle. So does this actually rule that that there is within young people? If a young person wants to open up a business of any time, does their age actually go against them?
On the age, again, as long as it's non-motor, not motor trade, and so again, if it was a beautician, someone wanting to own a shop, manufacturing, or a builder, or, you know, any hands-on sort of role, normally the age isn't as significant, but it does depend on what they're doing. But a lot of the time, if it's a new business, the insurer will really want to know what their experience is. So if you're a painter and decorator, for example, they'll say, you know, how long have they been doing this? Have they been working with somebody else? How are they going to cope and run the business? Because again, there's potential for fraud where they may open a new business, do a few employees' liability claims, close the business down, and that has happened again, unfortunately, with the Asian community. So insurers want to know you're going to stick around, you've got the experience of doing it, so you're going to be there long term.
But that must be really hard for some of our young people to do that, because they're a young person, let's say, for argument's sake, the age between 18 and 25, because that is the young group. So what kind of businesses are actually suited to young people where their insurance actually wouldn't be sky high? Is there like a high risk and a low risk type of business when it comes to insurance?
There is to an extent, and it depends what you're doing and who you're serving, you know, who your client base is. Shops, offices, these types of what I call risk, but businesses, would be low in terms of premium. But those like the beauticians can be high risk if they don't do things properly, and quite quickly it can be a problem. But anyone who's sort of manual labour, hands-on, the liability side can be quite heavy in terms of premium, unless again they've got the experience and they've shown they can.
Can you give an
well.
example? What do you mean?
So there was, I'll give an example of an Asian roofing company in London. They used to insure themselves really cheaply, and this was when I worked for the insurer at the time. And it came through to me, and I had a chat with the broker saying, look, this price is ridiculous for what they do. I've been on their website. They're roofing contractors, they're not general builders. Now that's a slight difference, and to someone who's the layman, they won't know that's a difference. To insurance, that's a complete difference. If you're a general builder and you've got a public liability policy, you're paying £200. If you're a roofer, regardless of what type of roofer, you're probably paying over £1,000 for the same level of insurance.
Is that because they're going to fall off the roof?
Yeah, they're working at height.
Okay.
So if they fall, it's going to
Sorry,
hurt more.
I just had to say
well,
that.
If they fall,
Okay.
I mean, from an insurance perspective, if they do fall, you want them to unfortunately die before they break their leg, because the payout would be less. That's how insurers see it, and that's why mainstream insurers won't do roofers. But this, again, unfortunately, was an Asian business. I mean, they had a turnover of probably just over £750,000. They employed over 40 staff, 2 claims in 1 year, £350,000 and £180,000. So needless to say, they hit a problem. Overnight, that company went bust. The director lost his house. All the staff were laid off. And even with those claims, if they were insured properly as a roofer, as roofing insurance, they would have been safe.
So who determines what label category you come under? Who decides that?
That should be with you and your broker. It should be jointly. You need to explain what you do to your broker, and your broker needs to fully understand that. So if you're a building contractor, you need to say, yeah, I just build houses. So they will take into account you'll fix the roof off the house. If you're a commercial mosque builder, they need to know you're not just building houses, you're building mosques, you're building minarets, big domes on the top of buildings. That's not a standard policy again, especially if you're known to be working at height and that's what you specialise in. So again, the insurance would reflect that. And the main thing with any business is on the business description. Whatever is on that business description says what you do.
So what about people who have multiple businesses?
You can get one policy to cover it all, depending on as long as those businesses are related.
Because you see, some people actually have a full-time job, and in their spare time, you know, they run their dad's business. You know, as some of our star guests have done that have been on this program, is they've studied. You know, the father's built up the business. You know, when they've left uni, they've come into that business, or even at uni, they've started. You know, a couple of businesses off, and then eventually settled on the one. You know, that worked for them.
Yeah, as long as it's common directorship, so it's the same person in charge of the businesses, you can get one policy to cover them all, but it really depends on what they do. So if you take Tesco, for imagination, Tesco obviously will have one policy that covers everything. But there's a process involved in doing that, and obviously the chairman, the company is looked after by one directorship. So even a small business, if you own 3 shops, you have a few properties that you own, it might not necessarily be under one policy, but you can arrange so it has all a common renewal date and everything is neatly together. Because any commercial policy, again, whether it be a school, whether it be a business, a charity, your broker will give you a risk register.
Okay.
Now this is basically what the broker has submitted, has taken from you, and he has submitted to the insurer. So that's your facts right there. From that, all your businesses, whatever you're doing, all your business descriptions will be on there. So that is your evidence if something goes wrong. Now, again, unfortunately, with the Asian brokerage and the Asian businesses will know this now. If they look in their file, have they got a risk register?
Okay.
And unfortunately, they'll probably find a lot of them don't have it.
Okay. I'd just like to ask this question for the benefit of all our businesses and our users. What are actually the common mistakes that are made by businesses themselves? What is it that they need to do to ensure that they actually have good policies and stuff?
Yeah.
What do you see?
And if you take your common shop, for example, and if you sell...
This is your newsagents, grocery.
Yeah, and if you sell cigarettes or anything like that, the temptation is to just get the cheapest insurance that you can get with anybody. Now, if you think, when you, again, I'll use the car store, if you buy a car, and you're dependent on the type of car, what it's going to do, you need to have that mindset when you're buying insurance. If you've never heard of the company, you can't then expect everything to be smooth and sailing when a claim goes wrong. It'd be naive to think it's going to go perfect. There's a reason people trust Zurich and AXA with the biggest businesses in the world, because they've got the staff, they've got the finance to back it up. So if you've got a shop and something happens, unfortunately, that's when you'll find out. So don't leave it to that point.
What are the typical claims that come in? What kind of examples can you give?
For a shop, slips and trips is obviously, and all shopkeepers will know that's what people do. They'll try and pour a bit of milk at a customer and say, oops, I fell. Okay. Whether even in offices, we've had dentist surgeries, and obviously we have a lot of dentist surgeries. People say, oh, the chair broke, I fell, hurt myself. In pharmacies, some people have tried to say there's medication, my child nearly swallowed it. There's unfortunately lots of bad claims that have happened, and this is the Asian community on the Asian community sometimes as well.
So what can businesses do to safeguard?
Again, this is the working relationship with the broker. I think the mindset tends to be, and it's changing, but with the Asian community, you pay your premium and you don't want to see that again until next year. You don't want to hear from that broker. He's the pain that you have to deal with at the time. But if you work with your broker, he will go through the risk management, what we call, and that's basically making sure you are protected as well as you can be, but you do things yourself, and that doesn't mean you have to spend money. There's simple measures that you can do to put in place, and we'll go into sort of the facial scheme, but even in Musters, claims are starting to arise, and there's ways to sort of counteract and do things to prevent it. But it's the same in business. If you're a sort of shop and you have products that people can test and they could slip, you should be having a wet surface, a non-slip surface in that wet area. Most don't do it, but if you get a claim, that's £5,000–6,000 that's getting paid up, which means your insurance is going to go up 20–30%.
So, the key question is that are insurance premiums on the rise or on the fall? Are they? What determines the pricing structure? Is it external influences like a recession that would impact on the pricing structure of insurance premiums? Is it the levels of payout that have been given throughout, like with the riots?
The recession, to an effect, doesn't have a huge amount of influence on the insurance world. It acts separately from that. It'll affect the banks, and because we're regulated by the same body, the Financial Services Authority, you immediately think obviously the insurers are going to suffer as well. It doesn't matter, but again, because of part of the legal requirement for employers' liability, public liability and professional indemnity, insurers know they're going to get paid, so they don't have that reaction that we need to claim money back. But where we are with pricing is it's not going to get any lower, unfortunately. Now the reason being is insurance works in a cycle, what we call sort of the hard market, if you imagine a circle, and then the soft market. So the hard market is at the top and the soft market is at the bottom, and it sort of goes round in a circle, and we are at the bottom. So the prices are the cheapest that they are now.
Really?
And this is commercial.
Oh dear people, that doesn't sound like good news, does it?
I'm not the voice of joy, unfortunately. But what will happen is, unfortunately, either an insurance company will go bust or there'll be a substantial loss made. So that's like another flood or something like that, and an insurance company will have to react. Then that forces a bolt reaction from all the insurance companies, and they all put their premiums up.
For example, the riots that happened during the summer, so has that put everybody else's premiums up?
But it takes time. Unfortunately, what insurance does, they work over like a 10-year cycle. They don't work instantly because their funds, they work so in advance with actuaries. So the riots probably won't take effect another 5 years now. Why motor insurance is going up now? Public liability claims haven't just started happening. They've been going over 10 years, and that's why now we're all being affected. So the riots will have a gradual effect. Same with the Cockermouth floods. They will have effect on properties. And bit by bit, you'll see that with certain insurers.
I hope you're all enjoying this programme, because we're getting loads and loads of golden hints and tips here, which we wouldn't have had otherwise. So thank you very much, Asif, for keeping up with my questions.
No problem.
But now we're going to move on to something else that Asif's been talking about as well, and something that is also involved with. And that is also a member of the Muslim Council for Britain, and is directly responsible, or founded, I believe, the Faith Shore Insurance. And that is all about Sharia compliant policies to do in particular with mosques. So number one, I want to ask you what Faith Shore is about. What is that?
There have been attempts to make Sharia compliant insurance in the UK, but it's always failed because they've adapted models that won't work here, and there's a reason for that. The cases that work are in Sudan, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, obviously run countries. The state back the Sharia compliant insurance, so if there's shortfalls, if there's problems, the state dip in and pay it. That's not going to happen in England anytime soon. The state aren't going to back Sharia compliant insurance, so we have to do it as a Muslim community. We have to do it ourselves. So that's why Faith Shore was built in a particular way, different to any other.
And Faith Shore is a part of Inspire Risk Management.
It's a specific scheme, and the reason being is obviously we have to keep the money and the funds separate, and that's what that will do. We will have Islamic scholars sitting over who will be what we call the Sharia Supervisory Board, and they will ensure the investments from the separate pool of money being invested only be invested in halal investments.
I'm going to have to stop you there, simply because we have a very large, as well, we're lucky, a non-Muslim audience, and some of them wouldn't even have a clue what the word Sharia means, never mind a Sharia compliant policy. So what are we talking about when we say Sharia?
When we talk of Sharia in very simple terms, it abides by...
For our non-Muslim audience?
Yeah, it abides by Islamic principles and the way that we would like to live our life. And in very simple terms, it's just to do things morally. So you're not making interest or gaining profit by a means that would be deemed unscrupulous. So
we're talking about non-interest related policy?
Yeah, riba in Islamic terms.
Because interest is considered not halal, basically.
Exactly.
Okay, so carry on.
So the plan is, we insure, the scheme launched as of September last year. We insure 90 masjids, I think.
This is for the UK?
For the UK. As of all the masjids we insure, I think very few have turned us down knowing what we're doing.
Can I just ask one question? If you've insured 90 mosques, and I believe there's about, I don't know, 1,500
overall.
So,
registered are different to non-registered, though, unfortunately.
Okay, so was there a policy for them to insure before you guys came along?
There are insurers. Unfortunately, again, I would say 90% of the masjids that I first went into weren't insured correctly. Okay. Because they weren't meeting their legal requirements. And this is not just a mosque issue, it's a faith issue. A lot of the religious organisations don't have this in place. Reason being is the management tend to be voluntary, committee-based, and do things part-time. So
is this just for mosque, or are we talking about gurdwaras and other religious buildings?
Every religious organisation.
So they can all come to you?
The Faith Shore scheme can do it. Obviously, it will be Sharia compliant, and that would probably be only beneficial to mosques, but there's no reason other organisations couldn't do it. Churches won't do it because they're insured directly by a company owned by the All Churches Trust.
The reason why we're discussing Sharia compliant policies and mosques is because a lot of our Muslim businesses are also involved with charitable, religious activities in their spare time. So whilst we have Asif Khan in the studio, I thought we could just ask him a few questions regarding Sharia compliant policies for anybody out there that I know that are all involved in all these religious activities. So that's why we're talking about this. So if you could just carry on. So one of the key questions is a Sharia compliant policy cheaper than a traditional policy? Because it's about money as well.
Yeah, it's because we built it as a scheme and it's priced and put in a certain way. It's very competitive. There will always be somebody who will try and do something cheaper. The reason being, I have not used a fringe insurer. We've used a main market insurer called Hiscox. And most people know them for insuring the likes of Wayne Rooney's house, Rio Ferdinand's house. They're known for that sort of thing. But because obviously they see, well, we've shown them that mosques, gurdwaras are looked after more than people's own homes. They've bought into the idea and they've supported the plan to become Sharia compliant, and which we hope will be within 18 to 24 months.
So the question being, are they cheaper than traditional policies?
If the masjid does everything right, we have halved some masjid premiums. The way it's going, we would look to do the same with Islamic schools, and after that, on the success and depending on how that's been working, and as long as everyone does things right, because it's one thing to ask for Sharia compliance, but you also have to meet us halfway. So for mosques, for any religious organisation, you have to make sure you're doing your legal obligations. So safeguarding child protection, you have to have.
You're doing a few courses this week,
correct.
Next weekend, I believe.
In September, we've got 2 planned, and it's free for masjids to attend. One is we're fortunate to have Bolton Council of Mosques has given us their venue, and that's on September the 8th, this Saturday. And the second one is in Leicester on September the 15th at Mudney High School, and again the Federation of Muslim Organisations of Leicester have organised that for us.
Thank you very much. I think we're just wrapping up right to the end of our programme, but if you need any more information regarding some of the training that's being offered by Asif Khan and Faisal, all you have to do is Google it, and you can also Google my name, and I will also show up on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and also the programme will be recorded and played on my YouTube channel. So if you've got any questions, please do email us or inbox us and all our various forms of contact, and we shall do our best to answer your questions. So thank you for watching us today, and a very big thank you to Asif Khan and explaining this whole maze of insurances. I hope you've all found it really, really useful, and hopefully we shall see you next week.